I always sensed that my family held a low opinion of me. During my childhood, I was the one who stood out awkwardly, the reserved child who never conformed to their expectations. While my cousins bragged about their lavish weekend events and designer outfits, I was the studious one, dedicating my time to learning, working, and devising an escape plan. I had no desire to impress anyone, especially not my pompous, self-centered relatives. Yet, as luck would have it, I found success. I toiled tirelessly, created something meaningful for myself, and earned more than any of them ever dreamed of. Not that they acknowledged it, or rather, they pretended my achievements were non-existent, until they saw a chance to gain from it. Which brings us to this evening. I hadn't intended to meet them. In fact, I had spent years dodging these family reunions, because they were always predictable. Patronizing comments, insincere grins, and constant reminders that, regardless of my accomplishments, I would forever be labeled as the outcast. But my mother, bless her soul, practically pleaded with me to attend. Just one dinner, Mark. It's been years. I gave in. I regretted my decision the instant I entered that overpriced steakhouse. The entire extended family was already gathered at a long, camel-colored table, laughing and chatting as if in a film. My cousin Jason, my greatest tormentor during childhood, was at the center, grinning as if he owned the place. When his gaze fell on me, that smile grew wider. Oh, look who decided to grace us with his presence. Jason reclined in his chair, his voice loud enough to attract attention. Didn't think you had time for us, big shot. I forced a courteous smile and took a seat at the end of the table. Jason frowned. Sorry Mark, but that spot's taken. I looked around. The only vacant seats were beside Jason or his equally smug sister, Rachel. I reached for another chair, but Rachel rolled her eyes. That one's taken too. I blinked in disbelief. You must be joking. Jason chuckled and leaned in, resting his elbows on the table. Mark, this table is for family. You can find a place outside. Laughter erupted. Not from everyone, but enough to clench my jaw. My mother appeared uneasy, but she remained silent, as she always did. My aunt smirked, and my uncle shook his head, as if I were some embarrassing anecdote. Jason, on the other hand, looked quite pleased with himself. I could have walked away. I should have walked away, but instead I smiled and said, "No, I'll stay." I grabbed an empty chair from a nearby table and dragged it over, placing it just outside the main group, but still close enough to technically be at the table. A waiter approached, looking uncertain, but I waved him off and ordered a coffee. Jason and Rachel exchanged glances, but they didn't argue, not yet. Then the real performance began. I wasn't naive. I understood why they wanted me there. They had no interest in reconnecting. They were interested in showing off. Throughout dinner, they made a spectacle of ordering the priciest items on the menu. "I'll have the Wagyu," Jason declared, slamming the menu shut. "And the lobster. Oh, and another round of drinks for everyone." He shot me a smirk. "We're celebrating, after all." Rachel grinned. "Yeah, we should really enjoy ourselves tonight." "Desserts too," my uncle chimed in. "Let's get the most extravagant ones." The waiters kept arriving, and the bill kept rising. I remained silent, just sipping my coffee, watching them with an amused expression. Then, when the plates were cleared, the wine glasses empty, and everyone lounged back with satisfied sighs, the waiter came with a bill, $3,247. He placed it right in front of me. Jason stretched lazily. "You got this, right, Mark?" Rachel giggled. "Come on, it's nothing for you." Silence fell. The entire table was now staring at me, waiting. I let the moment linger, then slowly picked up the bill, pretending to care about the total. Then I chuckled. A soft, knowing sound. Jason frowned. "What's so amusing?" I leaned back, took another sip of my coffee, and grinned. "Oh, you guys have no clue who's covering it tonight." With that, I placed the bill back down, right in front of Jason. Jason stared at the bill, blinking as if trying to comprehend what just occurred. I leaned back, looking completely at ease, watching the confusion spread across the table like wildfire. "Wait, you're serious?" Jason's voice dropped slightly, but there was now a nervous edge to it. His grin faltered, just for a moment. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I took another slow sip of my coffee, watching his expression shift from confusion to realization, and then to something much darker. Rachel, noticing the change, nudged Jason quickly. Isn't your company doing well, Mark? She asked sweetly, the hint of sarcasm almost unnoticeable. Surely a dinner like this won't dent your wallet. There it was, the expectation. The assumption that I had to finance their extravagance. Just because I was the successful one. They didn't care about the hard work it took to reach this point. They didn't care that I had busted my tail for years, building my own business from scratch. All they cared about was the money they thought I owed them. But this wasn't merely about finances. No, it was about their belief that they could treat me poorly, while reaping the benefits of my success. Jason tried again, his voice now more forceful, though his smile had turned into a tight grimace. Come on, Mark. You know you can cover it. He looked at the waiter and back at me, as if he was about to give me one last chance to play the nice guy. The bill's huge, but you're a businessman, right? Just swipe that card and call it a night. My mother, who had been quiet until now, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Mark, honey, please. It's just dinner. It's a family gathering, and you know how they can be. Her voice trailed off, as if she was trying to keep the peace. But I could sense she wasn't entirely on their side. My mother had always been the mediator, the one who never wanted to stir the pot. But this time, I felt the frustration bubbling beneath the surface. The way she understood I was being exploited, but lacked the courage to speak up. I gently set the coffee cup down and looked around, at the faces fixed on me. My uncle, his large belly spilling over the edge of his chair, leaned forward, his voice gruff. Look, Mark, I don't know what's going on with you, but don't pretend we don't know your situation. You've been raking in cash for months now. Don't act like a child. Pay the bill and let's go home. He was practically demanding it, his tone cold and calculating. The others around the table nodded, some still grinning, others just waiting for me to fold under the pressure. It was clear they thought I would cave, that I would simply pay to avoid the awkwardness. But I wasn't going to cave. Not this time. Not after all those years of being belittled, of being the one they always mocked or ignored when it wasn't convenient for them. And it wasn't just that. No, there was something far more satisfying about watching them squirm now that they had no idea what was coming. I smiled slightly. Not a big, proud grin like Jason's, but a small, almost playful smile. All right, I said, my voice calm and controlled. I'll cover the bill. A chorus of relieved sighs echoed around the table, some even patting me on the back like I'd just achieved a moral victory. But I wasn't finished yet. Not by a long shot. Jason's face lit up. See, that wasn't so difficult, was it? He offered a mock salute. Thanks, big shot. I leaned forward, my smile unwavering. Nah, I changed my mind. Good luck, guys. The silence at the table was instantaneous, as if someone had pressed the mute button. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. Jason's expression shifted from confidence to something darker. He opened his mouth to protest, but I was already standing up, reaching for my jacket. I wasn't leaving just yet, but I wanted them to feel the tension mounting. By the way, I added, my voice low, if you don't want to be responsible for this hefty bill, you might want to reconsider how much you order next time. Jason's eyes widened now, no longer the self-assured cousin who always took advantage of me. His jaw tightened, and he glanced around the table, clearly uncertain about what to do. He had expected me to be the punching bag again. Instead, I was setting the rules for once. I turned to leave the table, walking slowly, fully aware they would follow the script I had set. The waiter was still standing there, waiting for someone to take charge. And then I heard it. Hey, Jason snapped. You can't just... But I didn't allow him to finish. I'll be over there, I called back, gesturing to the lounge area a few feet away, out of sight from the main dining room. Just let me know when you've figured it out. I walked away, feeling the tension in the air as I made my way to the lounge. They didn't know how to handle it. They thought they could push me, guilt-trip me, and I would just fold like I always had. But this time, I wasn't going to play their game. The arrogance, the entitlement. They were about to learn a lesson they wouldn't forget anytime soon. As I sank into the plush chair, I glanced back toward the dining area. Jason was standing there now, nervously adjusting his collar, speaking in hushed tones with Rachel and my mother. Their voices were barely audible from where I sat, but I could make out a few words. Mark's not going to. He'll pay, right? Don't make him mad. We need him for the bill. Do we have enough? The desperation was palpable. They were trying to figure out who could cover what. calculating how much they could possibly scrape together, without actually reaching into their own pockets. They were about to learn that this time, I wasn't going to be their safety net. Minutes passed. I checked my phone, acting as if I didn't have a care in the world. But every few seconds, I glanced over just to catch a glimpse of their panic. The waiter lingered nearby, probably giving them the side eye, waiting for them to make a decision. The longer this continued, the more evident it became that they were in over their heads. It wasn't long before Jason approached me, looking as if he had just walked into a room filled with hot coals. His face was a mix of frustration and something resembling guilt. I remained seated, taking my time before looking up at him. "What's up?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. He exhaled sharply, trying to maintain his composure. "Mark, this isn't funny. The bill is far higher than we anticipated. Can you just help us out this time? I mean, we're family, right?" I couldn't help but let out a small laugh. "Oh, I'm not laughing, Jason. I'm serious. You all wanted this meal. You ordered whatever you wanted without checking if I was okay with it. And now you're asking me to foot the bill. For the wine, for everything." He paused, swallowing hard. "Look man, we didn't realize it would be like this. I mean, it's just dinner, right? Can't you just help out?" I leaned back in the chair, letting his words linger in the air for a moment. This was the same tired act they always pulled. No self-awareness, no accountability. They didn't care about me. They only cared about my money. "Jason, I'm done playing this game," I finally said. "You're all adults, right? You can afford to pay for your own meals. I'm not your bank anymore. I don't care if you're my family. That doesn't mean I owe you anything." His expression shifted from desperation to defensiveness, his eyes narrowing. "You're going to let us pay for all of this? After everything we've done for you? After all the times we've been there for you?" I shot him a flat look. "What? You mean all those times you asked me to cover everything, while you sat back and acted as if I owed you something? That doesn't count as being there for me, Jason." Behind him, Rachel and my mother were watching closely, and I could see their anxiety growing with every second. They knew this wasn't going according to their plan. I could see the wheels turning in Rachel's mind, probably trying to devise a way to manipulate the situation. My mom, on the other hand, looked more panicked than I'd ever seen her. "Well, we can't just leave, can we?" Rachel's voice was now high-pitched, cracking with stress. "I mean, we're not going to walk away from a $3,000 bill. That would be insane." I raised an eyebrow. "No one's walking away, Rachel. You guys are staying and paying. I'm done with this charade. I don't care if you're my family. You've been taking advantage of me for years. And I'm finished." Jason's face was turning red now, frustration bubbling to the surface. "You can't be serious. You're just going to leave us here to suffer? We're stuck with the bill, Mark, and you're—" "I'm stuck with the bill? You think I made those choices?" I interrupted. "You all decided what to order. You made the choices. Now live with the consequences." Rachel opened her mouth to argue, but my mother cut her off, her voice trembling. "Mark, please. This isn't the time for this. We're family, remember? Just help us out. You can afford it." Her words lingered heavily in the air. They knew I could afford it. That was the issue. They were aware of my income, how successful I had become. But they never viewed that success as something I had earned. No, they only saw it as an opportunity to leech off me. I stood up slowly, straightening my jacket. "No, I can't afford it, Mom. You can, Jason can, Rachel can. But I'm not cleaning up your mess this time." I turned to the waiter, who had been hovering nearby, clearly aware of what was happening. I caught his eye and gave him a quick nod, signaling that I was finished. And just like that, I walked toward the exit, not looking back. I could hear their murmurs as I stepped out of the lounge, and into the cool evening air. I didn't glance back. The sound of footsteps following me slowed my pace. But I wasn't about to turn around. They had dug their own hole. Now, it was time to see how deep they'd have to dig to escape it. It wasn't long before I reached the parking lot, my hands stuffed in my pockets as I stood there, staring at my car. I could hear the clatter of heels approaching, and then Rachel's voice calling my name. "Mark, wait." I didn't reply. My heart rate was steady. I was calm. But I could hear her desperation, how she was trying to pull me back into their drama. I didn't want to play this game anymore. "Mark," she called again, her voice shaking. "You can't just leave. Please, This is serious. I turned around, cutting her off mid-sentence. You think I don't know what's serious, Rachel? You think I don't know exactly what you're doing? She halted in her tracks. And for a moment, there was silence. The wind rustled through the trees, and I could feel the tension between us. She struggled to find words. But I wouldn't let her. Not this time. You've been using me for years, I said, my voice quiet but firm. Every time something arises. Mark, you'll cover this, right? It's never. Hey, Mark, how are you? It's always been about what I can do for you. Well, I'm done. Her eyes flickered, and I could see guilt flash across her face, before she quickly masked it with anger. You can't just leave us hanging like this. She snapped, her voice rising. We need you. You can't just walk away from family when we're in a tough spot. I felt my jaw tighten, but I forced myself to remain calm. I'm not walking away from family, Rachel. I'm walking away from your entitlement. This isn't family. This is manipulation. And I'm done allowing you to use me. For a moment, she just stood there, her face flushed, trying to figure out what to say next. But before she could respond, I saw Jason and my mom emerge from the restaurant, looking frantic. Jason's shirt was half untucked, and he appeared as if he'd been running. My mom's expression was a mix of guilt and panic, her eyes wide as she spotted me, standing just out of reach. Mark, please. We don't know what we're going to do, my mom said, her voice trembling. We can't afford this. You're the only one who can help us. Her words hit me, but not in the way she expected. I felt a strange, almost detached satisfaction as I watched their desperation unfold. They had pushed me for so long, and now they were realizing that everything has a price. You think I'm just going to bail you out again, huh? I asked, my voice quieter now. You think this is just about money? Well, it's not. This is about respect. This is about recognizing that I've worked hard to get where I am. And you can't just keep using me when things don't go your way. Jason stepped forward, hands raised in a plea. Mark, come on. Don't do this. We're family. You've got to understand. This isn't just about the money. It's about... No, Jason. I interrupted, my tone now firm. It's always been about the money for you. The moment you thought I'd pay, you stopped seeing me as a person. You viewed me as an ATM. I could see Jason's face redden as he struggled for words, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. It was as if he couldn't believe this was happening. Like he couldn't comprehend that I wasn't just going to fold under pressure. I glanced at my mom, who looked more frantic now. Her eyes darted between me and the restaurant, probably wondering if I would return and solve the problem for them. But I wasn't. Not this time. You've made your bed. Now you lie in it, I said, turning away. I'm done here. Before they could say anything else, I opened the door to my car and slid inside. I started the engine, the low hum of the car filling the silence between us. I could see their figures in my rearview mirror, still standing there, frozen in disbelief. But I wasn't about to feel sorry for them. They had their chance. They always had their chance. As I drove off, I felt a strange sense of liberation. For once, I wasn't the fool. I wasn't the one who was going to be used. And as the restaurant faded into the distance, I knew I had made the right choice. They had pushed too far. Now it was time for them to face the consequences of their actions. I hadn't gone far when my phone buzzed, and I knew instantly it was them. I didn't bother answering. Let them call. Let them text. I wasn't picking up anymore. But of course, they didn't give up. They didn't just let it go. By the time I reached home, there were 6 missed calls from my mom, 4 from Jason, and a text from Rachel that read, Mark, we're really sorry. Please come back. We'll pay you back. Please don't leave us like this. I stared at the text for a long moment, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. But I didn't reply. I didn't need to. They had no idea how badly they had miscalculated. I tossed my phone onto the couch and grabbed a beer from the fridge. It was quiet in my apartment. I could hear the faint sound of traffic outside, the soft hum of the refrigerator, and nothing else. The silence felt so much better than the chaos I had just walked away from. But as the minutes passed, I began to feel this odd mix of satisfaction and something else, relief, maybe. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about finally standing up for myself, something I had never truly done with them. Just then, I heard my phone buzz again. I glanced over. It was another text from Rachel. This time it was short and to the point. We can't pay the bill. It's $3,000. Please help. That was it. I stared at the message for a long time. It felt almost surreal. $3,000. The same amount they had casually dropped on me earlier, thinking it was no big deal. I thought about how they had expected me to cover it all, how they had planned their night around me, picking up the check like it was nothing. I didn't feel sorry for them. Not at all. I sat back down on the couch, cracked open the beer, and watched the screen, waiting for the inevitable calls to follow. It was like clockwork. Not even 5 minutes later, the phone buzzed again, this time with a call from Jason. I picked it up. Mark, he started, his voice thick with frustration. Look, we get it. You're mad. But we need your help. We can't cover this. You have to help us. I could hear the desperation in his voice, the panic. It almost made me smile. But I held it in. Jason, I already told you. I said, my voice steady. You need to figure this out yourselves. You've gotten yourselves into this mess. It's not my problem. But Mark, you don't understand. This is family. Jason snapped, his words tumbling out in a rush. You're just going to leave us to deal with this on our own? After everything we've been through? Everything we've been through? I repeated incredulously. You mean the years of you all treating me like an ATM? The endless requests for help that always came with strings attached? That's what you mean. There was a pause on the other end. Then a long sigh. I didn't mean it like that, Mark. Please, we're not using you. We just need help. Help, I said. What I've been giving you isn't help, Jason. It's enabling. And you know what? You'll figure it out. You're grown adults. If I keep bailing you out, you'll never learn. The silence that followed was heavy. He didn't argue anymore. I knew he understood what I was saying, even if he didn't want to admit it. Good luck, Jason. I said, my tone colder now. You'll need it. I hung up before he could say anything else. The rest of the night passed quietly. I enjoyed my beer, put on a movie, and let everything unfold. Sure enough, I got one last text from my mom, reading, Mark, please. If you're still upset, we'll make it up to you. Just please come back and pay the bill. But I didn't reply. They were on their own now. The next day, I learned they hadn't been able to pay the bill, and had to make some embarrassing calls to their own friends for help. I heard they even had to take out a loan to cover part of it. The worst part? The manager of the restaurant had called them out for trying to play the family card and using people to cover their irresponsible spending. They were humiliated. And me? I didn't feel an ounce of guilt. In the end, the real payoff wasn't the money, or the satisfaction of watching them struggle. It was the fact that, for once, I had taken control. I had finally drawn the line. And that was worth way more than any meal I could have paid for. I wasn't going to be their fool anymore. I had learned the hard way that sometimes the best way to love family was to let them stand on their own 2 feet, even if it meant they'd fall flat. I had done my part. Now, it was their turn to figure it out. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.